Part 3 of The Life and Death of Mr. Badman by John Bunyan. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
All these causes of swearing, so far as I can perceive, flow from the same root as do the oaths themselves, even from a hardened and desperate heart. But pray, show me now how wicked cursing is to be distinguished from this kind of swearing.
Swearing, as I said, hath immediately to do with the name of God, and it calls upon him to be witness to the truth of what is said. That is, if they that swear by him. Some indeed swear by idols, as by the Mass, by Our Lady, by saints, beasts, birds, and other creatures, but the usual way of our profane ones in England is to swear by God, Christ, faith, and the like. But however, or by whatever they swear, cursing is distinguished from swearing thus. To curse profanely, it is to sentence another or ourself, for or to evil, or to wish that some evil might happen to the person or thing under the curse unjustly. It is to sentence for or to evil, that is without a cause. Thus Shimei cursed David. He sentenced him for and to evil unjustly, when he said to him, come out, thou bloody man, and thou man of Belial. The Lord hath returned upon thee all the blood of the house of Saul, in whose stead thou hast reigned, and the Lord hath delivered the kingdom into the hand of Absalom thy son. And behold, thou art taken in thy mischief, because thou art a bloody man. This David calls a grievous curse. And behold, saith he to Solomon his son, thou hast with thee Shimei a Benjamite, which cursed me with a grievous curse in the day when I went to Mahanaim. But what was this curse? Why, first, it was a wrong sentence passed upon David. Shimei called him a bloody man, man of Belial, when he was not. Secondly, he sentenced him to the evil that at present was upon him, for being a bloody man, that is, against the house of Saul, when that present evil overtook David, for quite another thing. And we may thus apply it to the profane ones of our times, who in their rage and envy have little else in their mouths but a sentence against their neighbor, for and to evil unjustly. How common is it with many, when they are but a little offended with one, to cry, hang him, damn him, rogue. This is both a sentencing of him for and to evil, and is in itself a grievous curse. 2. The other kind of cursing is to wish that some evil might happen to and overtake this or that person or thing. And this kind of cursing Job counted a grievous sin. I have not suffered, says he, my mouth to sin by wishing a curse to his soul, or consequently to body or estate. This then is a wicked cursing, to wish that evil might either befall another or ourselves. And this kind of cursing young Badman accustomed himself unto. 1. He would wish that evil might befall others. He would wish their necks broken, or that their brains were out, or that the pox or plague was upon them, and the like. All which is a devilish kind of cursing, and is become one of the common sins of our age. 2. He would also as often wish a curse to himself, saying, would I might be hanged or burned, or that the devil might fetch me, if it be not so, or the like. We count the damned blades to be great swearers, but when in their hellish fury they say, God damn me, God perish me, or the like, they rather curse than swear, yea, curse themselves, and that with a wish that damnation might light upon themselves, which wish and curse of theirs, in a little time they will see accomplished upon them, even in hellfire, if they repent not of their sins.
But did this young Badman accustom himself to such filthy kind of language?
I think I may say that nothing was more frequent in his mouth, and that upon the least provocation. Yea, he was so versed in such kind of language, that neither father, nor mother, nor brother, nor sister, nor servant, no, nor the very cattle that his father had, could escape these curses of his. I say that even the brute beasts, when he drove them, or rid upon them, if they pleased not his humour, they must be sure to partake of his curse. He would wish their necks broke, their legs broke, their guts out, or that the devil might fetch them, or the like. And no marvel, for he that is so hardy to wish damnation, or other bad curses to himself, or dearest relations, will not stick to wish evil to the silly beast in his madness.
Well, I see still that this Badman was a desperate villain. But pray, sir, since you have gone thus far, now show me whence this evil of cursing ariseth, and also what dishonour it bringeth to God, for I easily discern that it doth bring damnation to the soul.
This evil of cursing ariseth in general from the desperate wickedness of the heart, but particularly from 1. Envy, which is, as I apprehend, the leading sin to witchcraft. 2. It also ariseth from pride, which was the sin of the fallen angels. 3. It ariseth too from scorn and contempt of others. 4. But for a man to curse himself must needs arise from desperate madness. The dishonour that it bringeth to God is this: it taketh away from him his authority, in whose power it is only to bless and curse, not to curse wickedly as Mr. Badman, but justly and righteously, giving by his curse to those that are wicked the due reward of their deeds. Besides, these wicked men, in their wicked cursing of their neighbour, etc., do even curse God himself in his handiwork. Man is God's image, and to curse wickedly the image of God is to curse God himself. Therefore, as when men wickedly swear, they rend and tear God's name, and make him as much as in them lies the avoucher and approver of all their wickedness. So he that curseth and condemneth in this sort his neighbour, or that wisheth him evil, curseth, condemneth, and wisheth evil to the image of God, and consequently judgeth and condemneth God himself. Suppose that a man should say with his mouth, I wish that the king's picture was burned. Would not this mean, so saying, render him as an enemy to the person of the king? Even so it is with them that, by cursing, wish evil to their neighbour, or to themselves, they contemn the image, even the image of God himself.
But do you think that the men that do thus, do think that they do so vilely, so abominably?
The question is not what men do believe concerning their sin, but what God's word says of it. If God's word says that swearing and cursing are sins, though men should count them for virtues, their reward will be a reward for sin, to wit, the damnation of the soul. To curse another and to swear vainly and falsely are sins against the light of nature. 1. To curse is so, because whoso curseth another knows that at the same time he would not be so served himself. 2. To swear also is a sin against the same law, for nature will tell me that I should not lie, and therefore much less swear to confirm it. Yea, the heathens have looked upon swearing to be a solemn ordinance of God, and therefore not to be lightly or vainly used by men, though to confirm a matter of truth.
But I wonder, since cursing and swearing are such evils in the eyes of God, that he doth not make examples to others for their committing such wickedness.
Alas, so he has, 1,000 times twice told, as may be easily gathered by any observing people in every age and country. I could present you with several myself, but waiving the abundance that might be mentioned, I will here present you with 2. One was that dreadful judgment of God upon one N.P. at Wimbledon in Surrey, who, after a horrible fit of swearing at and cursing of some persons that did not please him, suddenly fell sick and in a little time died, raving, cursing, and swearing. But above all take that dreadful story of Dorothy Maitly, an inhabitant of Ashover in the county of Derby. This Dorothy Maitly, saith the realtor, was noted by the people of the town to be a great swearer and curser and liar and thief, just like Mr. Badman. And the labour that she did usually follow was to wash the rubbish that came forth of the lead mines, and there to get sparks of lead ore. And her usual way of asserting of things was with these kind of imprecations: I would I might sink into the earth, if it be not so; or I would God would make the earth open and swallow me up. Now upon the 23 of March, 1660, this Dorothy was washing of ore upon the top of a steep hill, about a quarter of a mile from Ashover, and was there taxed by a lad for taking of 2 single pence out of his pocket, for he had laid his breeches by, and was at work in his drawers. But she violently denied it, wishing that the ground might swallow her up if she had them. She also used the same wicked words on several other occasions that day. Now one George Hodgkinson of Ashover, a man of good report there, came accidentally by where this Dorothy was, and stood still a while to talk with her, as she was washing her oar. There stood also a little child by her tub side, and another a distance from her, calling aloud to her to come away. Wherefore the said George took the girl by the hand to lead her away to her that called her. But behold, they had not gone above 10 yards from Dorothy, but they heard her crying out for help. So looking back, he saw the woman and her tub and sieve twirling around and sinking into the ground. Then said the man, Pray to God to pardon thy sin, for thou art never like to be seen alive any longer. So she and her tub twirled round and round till they sunk about 3 yards into the earth, and then for a while stayed. Then she called for help again, thinking, as she said, that she should stay there. Now the man, though greatly amazed, did begin to think which way to help her, but immediately a great stone which appeared in the earth fell upon her head and brake her skull, and then the earth fell in upon her and covered her. She was afterwards digged up and found about 4 yards within ground, with the boy's 2 single pence in her pocket, but her tub and sieve could not be found.
You bring to my mind a sad story, the which I will relate unto you. The thing is this. About a bow-shoot from where I once dwelt, there was a blind alehouse, and the man that kept it had a son whose name was Edward. This Edward was, as it were, an half-fool, both in his words and manner of behaviour. To this blind alehouse certain jovial companions would, once or twice a week, come, and this Ned, for so they called him, his father would entertain his guests withal, to wit, by calling for him to make them sport by his foolish words and gestures. So, when these boon blades came to this man's house, the father would call for Ned. Ned therefore would come forth, and the villain was devilishly addicted to cursing, yea, to cursing his father and mother, and anyone else that did cross him. And because, though he was an half-fool, he saw that his practice was pleasing, he would do it with the more audaciousness. Well, when these brave fellows did come at their times to this tippling house, as they call it, to fuddle and make merry, then must Ned be called out, and because his father was best acquainted with Ned, and best knew how to provoke him, therefore he would usually ask him such questions, or command him such business, as would be sure to provoke him indeed. Then would he, after his foolish manner, curse his father most bitterly, at which the old man would laugh, and so would the rest of the guests, as at that which pleased them best, still continuing to ask that Ned still might be provoked to curse, that they might still be provoked to laugh. This was the mirth with which the old man did use to entertain his guests. The curses wherewith this Ned did use to curse his father, and at which the old man would laugh, were these, and such like. The devil take you, the devil fetch you. He would also wish him plagues and destructions many. Well, so it came to pass, through the righteous judgment of God, that Ned's wishes and curses were, in a little time, fueled upon his father. For not many months passed between them after this manner, but the devil did indeed take him, possess him, and also in few days carried him out of this world by death. I say, Satan did take him and possess him. I mean, so it was judged by those that knew him, and had to do with him in that his lamentable condition. He could feel him like a live thing go up and down in his body, and when tormenting time was come, as he had often tormenting fits, then he would lie like an hard bump in the soft place of his chest. I mean, I saw it so, and so would rent and tear him, and make him roar till he died away. I told you before that I was an ear and eye witness of what I here say, and so I was. I have heard Ned in his roguery cursing his father, and his father laughing thereat most heartily, still provoking of Ned to curse, that his mirth might be increased. I saw his father also when he was possessed. I saw him in one of his fits, and saw his flesh, as 'twas thought, by the devil, gathered up on an heap, about the bigness of half an egg, to the unutterable torture and affliction of the old man. There was also one free man, who was more than an ordinary doctor, sent for, to cast out this devil, and I was there when he attempted to do it. The manner whereof was this: they had the possessed into an out-room, and laid him on his belly upon a form, with his head hanging over the form's end. Then they bound him down thereto, which done, they set a pan of coals under his mouth, and put something therein which made a great smoke, by this means, as 'twas said, to fetch out the devil. There, therefore, they kept the man till he was almost smothered in the smoke, but no devil came out of him, at which Freeman was somewhat abashed, the man greatly afflicted, and I made to go away wondering and fearing. In a little time, therefore, that which possessed the man carried him out of the world, according to the cursed wishes of his son. And this was the end of this hellish mirth.
These were all sad judgments.
These were dreadful judgments indeed.
Aye, and they look like the threatening of that text, though chiefly it concerned Judas. As he loved cursing, so let it come unto him. As he delighted not in blessing, so let it be far from him. As he clothed himself with cursing as with a garment, so let it come into his bowels like water, and as oil into his bones.
It is a fearful thing for youth to be trained up in a way of cursing and swearing.
Trained up in them, that I cannot say Mr. Badman was, for his father hath oft times in my hearing bewailed the badness of his children, and of this naughty boy in particular. I believe that the wickedness of his children made him, in the thoughts of it, go many a night with heavy heart to bed, and with as heavy an one to rise in the morning. But all was one to his graceless son. Neither wholesome counsel nor fatherly sorrow would make him mend his manners. There are some, indeed, that do train up their children to swear, curse, lie, and steal, and great is the misery of such poor children, whose hard hap it is to be ushered into the world by, and to be under the tuition too of such ungodly parents. It had been better for such parents had they not begat them, and better for such children had they not been born. Oh, methinks for a father or a mother to train up a child in that very way that leadeth to hell and damnation, what thing so horrible! But Mr. Badman was not by his parents so brought up.
But, methinks, since this young Badman would not be ruled at home, his father should have tried what good could have been done of him abroad, by putting him out to some man of his acquaintance, that he knew to be able to command him, and to keep him pretty hard to some employ. So should he, at least, have been prevented of time to do those wickednesses that could not be done without time to do them in.
Alas, his father did so. He put him out betimes to one of his own acquaintance, and entreated him of all love that he would take care of son, and keep him from extravagant ways. His trade also was honest and commodious. He had besides a full employ therein, so that his young Badman had no vacant season nor idle hours yielded him by his calling, therein to take opportunities to do badly. But all was one to him, as he had begun to be vile in his father's house. Even so he continued to be when he was in the house of his master.
I have known some children who, though they have been very bad at home, yet have altered much when they have been put out abroad, especially when they have fallen into a family where the governors thereof have made conscience of maintaining of the worship and service of God therein. But perhaps that might be wanting in Mr. Badman's master's house.
Indeed, some children do greatly mend when put under other men's roofs. But, as I said, this naughty boy did not so, nor did his badness continue because he wanted a master that both could and did correct it. For his master was a very good man, a very devout person, one that frequented the best soul means, that set up the worship of God in his family, and also that walked himself thereafter. He was also a man very meek and merciful, one that did never overdrive young Badman in business, nor that kept him at it at unseasonable hours.
Say you so? This is rare. I, for my part, can see but few that can parallel, in these things, with Mr. Badman's master.
Nor I neither. Yet Mr. Badman had such an one. For the most past, masters are nowadays such as mind nothing but their worldly concerns. And if apprentices do but answer their commands therein, soul and religion may go whither they will. Yea, I much fear that there have been many towardly lads put out by their parents to such masters, that have quite undone them as to the next world.
End of Part 3. Part 4 of The Life and Death of Mr. Badman by John Bunyan. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
The more is the pity. But, pray, now you have touched upon this subject, show me how many ways a master may be the ruin of his poor apprentice.
Nay, I cannot tell you of all the ways, yet some of them I will mention. Suppose then that a towardly lad be put to be an apprentice with one that is reputed to be a godly man, yet that lad may be ruined many ways. That is, if his master be not circumspect in all things that respect both God and man, and that before his apprentice. 1. If he be not moderate in the use of his apprentice, if he drives him beyond his strength, if he holds him to work at unseasonable hours, if he will not allow him convenient time to read the word, to pray, etc. This is the way to destroy him, that is, in those tender beginnings of good thoughts and good beginnings about spiritual things. 2. If he suffers his house to be scattered with profane and wicked books, such as stir up to lust, to wantonness, such as teach idle, wanton, lascivious discourse, and such as has a tendency to provoke to profane drollery and jesting, and lastly, such as tend to corrupt and pervert the doctrine of faith and holiness. All these things will eat as doth a canker, and will quickly spoil in youth, etc., those good beginnings that may be putting forth themselves in them. 3. If there be a mixture of servants, that is, if some very bad be in the same place, that's a way also to undo such tender lads. For they that are bad and sordid servants will be often, and they have an opportunity to be, distilling and fomenting in their profane and wicked words and tricks before them, and these will easily stick in the flesh and minds of youth to the corrupting of them. 4. If the master have one guise for abroad, and another for home, that is, if his religion hangs by in his house as his cloak does, and he be seldom in it, except he be abroad, this young beginners will take notice of, and stumble at. We say hedges have eyes, and little pitchers have ears, and indeed children make a greater inspection into the lives of fathers and masters, etc., than ofttimes they are aware of. And therefore should masters be careful, else they may soon destroy good beginnings in their servants. 5. If the master be unconscionable in his dealing and trades with lying words, or if bad commodities be avouched to be good, or if he seeks after unreasonable gain, or the like, his servant sees it, and it is enough to undo him. Eli's sons, being bad before the congregation, made men despise the sacrifices of the Lord. But these things by and by, only they may serve for a hint to masters to take heed that they take not apprentices to destroy their souls. But young Badman had none of these hindrances. His father took care and provided well for him. As to this, he had a good master. He wanted not good books, nor good instruction, nor good sermons, nor good examples, no, nor good fellow servants neither, but all would not do.
'Tis a wonder that in such a family, amid so many spiritual helps, nothing should take hold of his heart. What, not good books? Nor good instructions? Nor good sermons? Nor good examples? Nor good fellow servants? Nor nothing do him good?
You talk, he minded none of these things. Nay, all these were abominable to him. 1. For good books they might lie in his master's house till they rotted for him. He would not regard to look into them, but contrariwise would get all the bad and abominable books that he could, as beastly romances, and books full of ribaldry, even such as immediately tended to set all fleshly lusts on fire. True, he durst not be known to have any of these to his master. Therefore he would never let them be seen by him, but would keep them in close places, and peruse them at such times as yielded him fit opportunities thereto. 2. For good instruction he liked that much as he liked good books. His care was to hear but little thereof, and to forget what he heard as soon as 'twas spoken. Yea, I have heard some that knew him say that one might evidently discern by the show of his countenance and gestures that good counsel was to him like little ease, even a continual torment to him. Nor did he ever count himself at liberty, but when farthest off of wholesome words. He would hate them that rebuked him, and count them as deadly enemies. 3. For good example, which was frequently set him by his master, both in religious and civil matters, these young Badman would laugh at, and would also make a byword of them, when he came in place where he with safety could. 4. His master indeed would make him go with him to sermons, and that where he thought the best preachers were. But this ungodly young man, what shall I say, was, I think, a master of art in all mischief. He had these wicked ways to hinder himself of hearing, let the preacher thunder never so loud. 1. His way was, when come into the place of hearing, to sit down in some corner, and then to fall fast asleep. 2. Or else to fix his adulterous eyes upon some beautiful object that was in the place, and so all sermon while therewith be feeding of his fleshly lusts. 3. Or if he could get near to some that he had observed would fit his humour, he would be whispering, giggling, and playing with them till such time as sermon was done.
Why, he was grown to a prodigious height of wickedness.
He was so, and that which aggravates all was. This was his practice as soon as he was come to his master. He was as ready at all these things as if he had before he came to his master served an apprenticeship to learn them.
There could not but be added, as you relate them, rebellion to his sin. Methinks it is as if he had said, I will not hear, I will not regard, I will not mind good, I will not mend, I will not turn, I will not be converted.
You say true, and I know not to whom more fitly to compare him than to that man, who, when I myself rebuked him for his wickedness, in this great huff replied, What would the devil do for company, if it was not for such as I?
Why, did you ever hear any man say so?
Yes, that I did. And this young Badman was like him, as an egg is like an egg. Alas, the Scripture makes mention of many that by their actions speak the same. They say unto God, Depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. Again, they refuse to hearken, and pull away their shoulder, and stop their ears. Yea, they make their hearts hard as an adamant stone, lest they should hear the law, and the words that the Lord of hosts hath sent. What are all these but such as Badman, and such as the young man but now mentioned? That young man was my playfellow when I was solacing myself in my sins. I may make mention of him to my shame, but he has a great many fellows.
Young Badman was like him indeed, and he trod his steps, as if his wickedness had been his very copy. I mean, as to his desperateness. For had he not been a desperate one, he would never have made you such a reply, when you was rebuking him for his sin. But when did you give him such a rebuke?
A while after God had parted him and I, by calling of me, as I hope by his grace, still leaving him in his sins. And so far as I could ever gather, as he lived, so he died, even as Mr. Badman did. But we will leave him and return again to our discourse.
Ha! Poor obstinate sinners! Do they think that God cannot be even with them?
I do not know what they think, but I know that God hath said, that as he cried, and they would not hear, so they shall cry, and I will not hear, saith the Lord. Doubtless there is a time coming when Mr. Badman will cry for this.
But I wonder that he should be so expert in wickedness so soon. Alas, he was but a stripling. I suppose he was, as yet, not 20.
No, nor 18 neither. But as with Ishmael, and with the children that mocked the prophet, the seeds of sin did put forth themselves betimes in him.
Well, he was as wicked a young man as commonly one shall hear of.
You will say so when you know all.
All. I think here is a great all. But if there is more behind, pray let us hear it.
Why then I will tell you that he had not been with his master much above a year and a half, but he came acquainted with 3 young villains, who here shall be nameless, that taught him to add to his sin much of like kind, and he as aptly received their instructions. One of them was chiefly given to uncleanness, another to drunkenness, and the third to purloining or stealing from his master.
Alas, poor wretch! He was bad enough before, but these, I suppose, made him much worse.
That they made him worse you may be sure of, for they taught him to be a thief one in all their ways.
It was an ill hap that he ever came acquainted with them.
You must rather word it thus. It was the judgment of God that he did. That is, he came acquainted with them through the anger of God. He had a good master, and before him a good father. By these he had good counsel given him for months and years together. But his heart was set upon mischief. He loved wickedness more than to do good, even until his iniquity came to be hateful. Therefore from the anger of God it was that these companions of his and he did at last so acquaint together. Says Paul, they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, and what follows? Wherefore God gave them over or up to their own hearts' lusts. And again, as for such as turn aside to their own crooked ways, the Lord shall lead them forth with the workers of iniquity. This therefore was God's hand upon him, that he might be destroyed, be damned, because he received not the love of the truth, that he might be saved. He chose his delusions and deluders for him, even the company of base men, of fools, that he might be destroyed.
I cannot but think, indeed, that it is a great judgment of God for a man to be given up to the company of vile men. For what are such but the devil's decoys, even those by whom he draws the simple into the net? A whoremaster, a drunkard, a thief? What are they but the devil's baits, by which he catcheth others?
You say right. But this young Badman was no simple one, if by simple you mean one uninstructed, for he had often good counsel given him. But if by simple you mean him that is a fool as to the true knowledge of and faith in Christ, then he was a simple one indeed. For he chose death rather than life, and to live in continual opposition to God rather than to be reconciled unto him, according to that saying of the wise man, the fools hated knowledge, and did not choose the fear of the Lord. And what judgment more dreadful can a fool be given up to, than to be delivered into the hands of such men that have skill to do nothing but to ripen sin, and hasten its finishing unto damnation? And therefore men should be afraid of offending God, because he can in this manner punish them for their sins. I knew a man that once was, as I thought, hopefully awakened about his condition. Yea, I knew two that were so awakened. But in time they began to draw back, and to incline again to their lusts. Wherefore God gave them up to the company of 3 or 4 men, that in less than 3 years' time brought them roundly to the gallows, where they were hanged like dogs, because they refused to live like honest men.
But such men do not believe that thus to be given up of God is in judgment and anger. They rather take it to be their liberty, and do count it their happiness. They are glad that their cord is loose, and that the reins are in their neck. They are glad that they may sin without control, and that they may choose such company as can make them more expert in an evil way.
Their judgment is therefore so much the greater, because thereto is added blindness of mind and hardness of heart in a wicked way. They are turned up to the way of death, but must not see to what place they are going. They must go as an ox to the slaughter, and as the fool to the correction of the stocks, till a dart strikes through their liver, not knowing that it is for their life. This, I say, makes their judgment double. They are given up to God for a while to sport themselves with that which will assuredly make them mourn at last, when their flesh and their body is consumed. These are those that Peter speaks of, that shall utterly perish in their own corruption. These, I say, who count it pleasure to riot in the daytime, and that sport themselves with their own deceivings, are as natural brute beasts, made to be taken and destroyed.
Well, but I pray now concerning these three villains that were young Badman's companions. Tell me more particularly how he carried it then.
How he carried it? Why, he did as they. I intimated so much before, when I said they made him an arch, a chief one in their ways. First, he became a frequenter of taverns and tippling houses, and would stay there until he was even as drunk as a beast. And if it was so that he could not get out by day, he would, be sure, get out by night. Yea, he became so common a drunkard at last that he was taken notice of to be a drunkard even by all.
This was swinish, for drunkenness is so beastly a sin so much against nature, that I wonder that any that have but the appearance of men can give up themselves to so beastly, yea, worse than beastly, a thing.
It is a swinish vanity indeed. I will tell you another story. There was a gentleman that had a drunkard to be his groom, and coming home one night very much abused with beer, his master saw it. Well, quoth the master within himself, I will let thee alone to-night, but to-morrow morning I will convince thee that thou art worse than a beast, by the behaviour of my horse. So when morning was come, he bids his man go and water his horse, and so he did. But coming up to his master, he commands him to water him again. So the fellow rid into the water the second time, but his master's horse would not now drink no more. So the fellow came up and told his master. Then said his master, Thou drunken sot, thou art far worse than my horse. He will drink but to satisfy nature, but thou wilt drink to the abuse of nature. He will drink but to refresh himself, but thou to thy hurt and damage. He will drink that he may be more serviceable to his master, but thou till thou art incapable of serving either God or man. O thou beast, how much art thou worse than the horse that thou ridest on?
Truly, I think that his master served him right, for, in doing as he did, he shewed him plainly, as he said, that he had not so much government of himself as his horse had of himself, and, consequently, that his beast did live more according to the law of his nature by far than did his man. But, pray, go on with what you have further to say.
Why, I say that there are 4 things, which, if they were well considered, would make drunkenness to be abhorred in the thoughts of the children of men. 1. It greatly tendeth to impoverish and beggar a man. The drunkard, says Solomon, shall come to poverty. Many that have begun the world with plenty have gone out of it in rags, through drunkenness. Yea, many children that have been born of good estates have yet been brought to a flail and a rake, through this beastly sin of their parents. 2. This sin of drunkenness, it bringeth upon the body many great and incurable diseases, by which men do in little time come to their end, and none can help them. So because they are overmuch wicked, therefore they die before their time. 3. Drunkenness is a sin that is oftentimes attended with abundance of other evils. Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contention? Who hath babblings? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of the eyes? They that tarry long at the wine, they that go to seek mixed wine, that is, the drunkard. 4. By drunkenness men do oftentimes shorten their days, go out of the alehouse drunk, and break their necks before they come home. Instances not a few might be given of this, but this is so manifest a man need say nothing.
But that which is worse than all is, it also prepares men for everlasting burnings.
Yea, and so it stupefies and besots the soul, that a man that is far gone in drunkenness is hardly ever recovered to God. Tell me, when did you see an old drunkard converted? No, no. Such an one will sleep till he dies. Though he sleeps on top of a mast, let his dangers be never so great and death and damnation never so near, he will not be awakened out of his sleep. So that if a man have any respect either to credit, health, life, or salvation, he will not be a drunken man. But the truth is, where this sin gets the upper hand, men are, as I said before, so intoxicated and bewitched with the seeming pleasures and sweetness thereof, that they have neither heart nor mind to think of that which is better in itself, and would, if embraced, do them good.
You said that drunkenness tends to poverty, yet some make themselves rich by drunken bargains.
I said so because the word says so. And as to some men's getting thereby, that is indeed but rare, and base. Yea, and base will be the end of such gettings. The word of God is against such ways, and the curse of God will be the end of such doings. An inheritance may sometimes thus be hastily gotten at the beginning, but the end thereof shall not be blessed. Hark what the prophet saith, Woe to him that coveteth an evil covetousness, that he may set his nest on high. Whether he makes drunkenness or aught else, the engine and decoy to get it. For that man doth but consult the shame of his own house, and spoiling of his family, and the damnation of his soul. For that which he getteth by working of iniquity is but a getting by the devices of hell. Therefore he can be no gainer, neither for himself or family. That gains by an evil course. But this was one of the sins that Mr. Badman was addicted to after he came acquainted with these three fellows, nor could all that his master could do break him of this beastly sin.
But where, since he was but an apprentice, could he get money to follow this practice? For drunkenness, as you have intimated, is a very costly sin.
His master paid for all. For, as I told you before, as he learned of these three villains to be a beastly drunkard, so he learned of them to pilfer, to steal from his master. Sometimes he would sell off his master's goods, but keep the money, that is, when he could. Also sometimes he would beguile his master by taking out his cash-box, and when he could do neither of these, he would convey away his master's wares, that he thought would be least missed, and send or carry them to such and such houses, where he knew they would be laid up to his use, and then appoint set times there to meet and make merry with these fellows.
This was as bad, nay, I think worse than the former, for by thus doing, he did not only run himself under the wrath of God, but has endangered the undoing of his master and his family.
Sins go not alone, but follow one the other, as do the links of a chain. He that will be a drunkard must have money either of his own, or of some other man's, either of his father's, mother's, master's, or at the highway or some way.
I fear that many an honest man is undone by such kind of servants.
I am of the same mind with you, but this should make the dealer the more wary what kind of servants he keeps, and what kind of apprentices he takes. It should also teach him to look well to his shop himself, also to take strict account of all things that are bought and sold by his servants. The master's neglect herein may embolden his servant to be bad, and may bring him in a short time to rags and a morsel of bread.
I am afraid that there is much of this kind of pilfering among servants in these bad days of ours.
End of Part 4.